So I made a set of skateboard wheels out of recycled skateboards. To start off, I need me some skateboards. I work with local skaters and skate shops and collect their secondhand boards that they no longer want or they're too beat up to continue skating. I start off by removing the grip tape and then sanding both sides of the board, as I need the bare wood to glue the skateboards to each other. I cut the skateboards into different sections as I used each section differently, and for this part I'm using the truck sections of the skateboards to make my wheels. I use double-sided tape to attach the skate blocks to a melamine board so that I can plane them all together, and then I'm going to cut them to smaller size. Once they're pretty flat, I make a template and just trace out the rough shape on the bandsaw. For these wheels, I kept them at about 2 inches in diameter, or just under 2 inches. To get them to their final shape, I used the belt sander to get them pretty close to circular. I am kind of eyeballing this, so I'm sure it's not going to be perfectly circular, but it's going to be good enough for my needs. Next was to make the holes for the bearings. I used a 22mm Forstner bit, and it was pretty straightforward to do the depth based off the thickness of the bearing. Following that was the holes for the spacers that will go in later. Next was to get the rounded edge for the wheels. This was a little tricky because this bit's a lot more aggressive, so I had to do this in 3 passes. If I was to do this again, I probably would do 4 passes because on that last pass it still was slightly aggressive, but fortunately I had my fingertip covers, so I had a pretty good grip on the wheel anyway. And obviously if you're not comfortable doing this, I don't recommend you doing it this way. And last step was to apply some poly, and I'm using a mixture of wipe on poly and mineral spirits, and I'm only doing 1 coat because I don't want these wheels to be too slick, just to keep the colors vibrant. Now let's see if I can actually skate in these wheels. And I could tell from the first ride that this is not going to go well. I was getting a lot of resistance. I needed to go really fast just to get some sort of speed. Since I was literally going nowhere with these wheels, I went back to the workshop to see if there's any way for me to fix this. So after taking it apart, I realized the spacer was creating too much resistance on the actual truck. And that was happening because the hole I made for the spacer was too tight and it wasn't allowing the wheel to move freely. Where in reality, actual skateboard wheels have a much larger opening for spacers. So this was just a design flaw on my part. You can see the difference. So this is with the spacer installed, and this is with the spacer removed. And you can already tell there's a big difference in the performance. And here we go. They are ready to ride, and let's see how long they last. Now they're all spinning. Let's go. Alright, let's actually give this a test drive. Now that I've removed the spacers that was preventing these wheels from rolling well, now these are rolling much smoother, so let's give this a try. My first impressions were, it felt nice. Granted, I was on a smooth surface and I was riding straight, but as soon as I started trying some tricks, I can tell I had very little grip, if any, on this surface. And for any trick I was to try, I had to land almost perfectly straight. Otherwise, if I leaned a little too forward, I would just slide off. So I had to land almost perfectly 180 for any kind of turning trick. Even landing a kickflip was difficult for me at first. I had to land pretty much straight and clean just to not fall off. And just as soon as I started to get the hang of the wheels, this happens. It finally happened. Shit. I could glue this back together. I'm gonna glue this and then try it again next time. Wheel, the same wheel. I think it was like this wheel that broke last time. That's a bummer. Unfortunately, these wheels couldn't hold up as well as I was hoping. I had to switch back to my regular wheels, my old reliables over here. Let's try to get a trick in this 90-degree heat.